Hello everyone, it's Luna here, and today I bring you something different, a PvP guide on how to bash build. A lot of people have been asking me about my bash build, how do I set it up, and after almost a year of researching and testing and doing maths and everything, and finally with subclassing, I finally feel confident on showing you my results and all the knowledge that I have, and sharing my build of course, but not only sharing my build, but teaching you guys on how to do damage with bash build. Because it's not only about the build, it's about the bash weaving, it's about understanding all the mechanical things about it, and it's a lot more complex maybe than you think. So we have timestamps, we will be covering all the pros and cons and different aspects and how to best set it up and tailor your own bash build so it can be suitable to your playstyle. So, enough said, let's get going. First, you may ask, why would you bash build? Is this build even for you? Well, if you enjoy a unique playstyle that is mechanically challenging, pressing a lot of buttons, literally 4 actions per second of pure fun, and that uses a tank weapon to do big damage, then you may enjoy bashing. When done properly, it works as a great brawler, and you can set it up for open world, BGs, dueling, whatever you enjoy the most. We will be using Sword and Shield, which is the best weapon for doing big bash damage with the strongest spammable in the game. So let's talk about bash and understand how it actually works. How to increase bash damage. Although we don't have the official numbers for the formula, we know that bash scales with a small fraction of your weapon spell damage plus an even smaller fraction of your armor. The scaling for these numbers are not good enough for us to build in this direction and have good results, so they will not be the priority. What we do have to greatly increase bash damage are flat bonuses, like the following ones. The Shield Deadly Bash passive for 500 flat bonus that comes with a massive 50% stamina cost reduction for bashing. The Glyph of Bashing that along with the Infused trait will provide you 800 flat bash damage for each of your jewelry. The crafted set Deadlands Demolisher for extra 935 bash damage that comes with an AoE proc every 2 seconds providing an extra bash hit. And the Bashing Brutality Red CP for extra 120 bash damage. All those bonuses are just too good to not have in your build. It's also worth to mention that every heavy armor piece will provide you 30 extra bash damage, but this bonus is not strong enough for us to go for more heavy pieces than needed. Medium will still provide more overall damage and bonuses than heavy. Just don't use the light armor if possible, since every piece decreases your bash damage by 1%. On top of the flat numbers, all your percent damage bonuses will also multiply bash damage. Buffs like Minor Berserk, Vulnerability, Essence Thief Set, etc. And bash also crits, so every bit of crit damage that you have will increase its damage, which is especially convenient considering the current crit meta. But the main thing is, once we go for bashing jewelry, we massively lose weapon spell damage, so it's not worth building around it anymore. Another great way to increase bash damage in general is with penetration. Since weapon spell damage won't do much, investing in penetration can be simply the best you can do for your damage. So the general idea is, go for flat bonuses with percent multipliers and then add a decent amount of pen over it. Now let's talk about bash weaving, and be prepared because this is the most complicated part of playing a bash build. Let's go! You all are familiar with light attack weaving. We do 1 light attack followed by 1 skill. Every skill has a global cooldown of 1 second, and this is our main metric for weaving. After the skill, you can kill your next light attack, so it drops almost together with the next skill. Now let's add bash on top of that. After your light attack plus skill, you bash after, and this will ensure 3 hits per global cooldown, with no time loss between skills. But actually, the bash follows a separate internal cooldown. In average, you can bash every 420 milliseconds, which allows us for a fraction more than 2 bashes per second, but since we're stuck with a 1 second cycle, we should only consider 2 bashes per second. So, in theory, we should be able to do 2 bashes per global cooldown, but not every skill will allow it. Some skills in the game, with longer animations, only allow you for a single bash per cast. Other faster animations allow for double bash weaving. And our strongest skill, that will be our spammable, Power Slam, allow for double bash weaving, with a special effect to it. Power Slam has what looks like a long delayed animation, but what is unique about it is that you can Q one bash during the beginning of this animation, and it will land as soon as the animation finishes, making it perfectly together with the skill damage. Not only that, but since you can Q the first bash, you actually activate its internal cooldown earlier, so it's possible to do the second bash right after Power Slam lands, providing an incredibly short burst of 3 hits together, 1 skill plus 2 bashes. Not to mention the light attack you put in the beginning of the weaving. So now let's understand how to perform it. You go first light attack plus Power Slam. After a short delay, around 200 milliseconds, you will Q your first bash. After another delay of around 450 milliseconds, you will input the second bash, and by that time Power Slam and the first bash will have just landed. This is basically a rhythm game. If you press the first bash too soon, you can cancel the skill. If you press too late, you will be doing a slow weaving. I made a drum sound to help you practice, and you can download it in the description of this video. Listen. The hi-hat is your light attack. The snare is your skill. And the kick is your bash. So, by following this sound and try to replicate this rhythm, you can practice double bash weaving. Please, remember to set a specific hotkey for bash. Don't use the block plus light attack way of doing it, as it won't allow you to freely bash weave without blocking. I recommend a mouse button for bash, or maybe a key on your left hand that you feel comfortable with it. You will be pressing this button a lot, so this is your biggest priority. If you use a controller, any trigger will be fine. You can bash weave all your skills, not just Power Slam, and it's your job to find which skills allow for single and which skills allow for double bash weaving. I did a lot of PvE bash weaving, by the way, and practicing for longer times in the dummy allowed me to get really consistent at it. Now let's list the pros and cons of a bash build, so we can better work on compensating for its cons while enhancing its pros. For pros, we have a very bursty, great damage with bash weaving. Every full bash weaving can be as strong as a bow proc from the assassination skill line. High block mitigation. The block mitigation from Sword and Shield can literally carry your defenses, allowing you for riskier playstyles with 2 offensive sets. 4 hits per second on a full weaving, draining a lot of stamina of the enemies that are blocking. If you don't know, the stamina drain from block can happen every 0.25 seconds, so multi-hit skills or weaving are especially good for draining resources. Now the cons. Sustain struggle. Bash takes stamina. 2 bashes per second can be rough, especially if you're abusing a lot of block weaving. Easily countered by block. All your damage is blockable. All your pressure can be mitigated by just blocking. Low weapon spell damage, which means it will be bad with proc sets and bad with healing skills that are not based on your max health. Limited to bash skills. Many great skills just won't do enough damage to be slotted in your skill bar. Really hard to perform well. Bash weaving is hard. Can feel really vulnerable to dot damage, especially when relying too much on block. Now that we understand the strengths and weaknesses of bash builds, let's choose the best skills and skill lines for our build. Let's first take a look on the Sword and Shield skill line. Power Slam, we already know, will be our spammable. Not only does it allow for double bash weaving, as it also counts as bash damage, which means all our flat damage bonuses will enhance the damage of this skill. It also has an effect that whenever we block, the next power slam will cost half the stamina, and we're usually blocking a lot of time, so this is great to help for our sustain. The second important skill to take a look is the scribing shield throw. With the first script, you can choose the type of damage. It can be either stamina or magic cost, which is nice. But you can also set the first script to pull your enemy, or even it to bounce 2 times between close enemies with multi-target script. With your second script, there are 2 great options. Knight's Valor will make it do an extra bash, which scales with all our bash damage, and also interrupts enemies, making this skill hit the very same damage as Power Slam. And with the Wayfarer's Mastery, it can buff your bash damage by 333 for 5 seconds on return. From my experience, it's much better to set this skill with the Knight's Valor, cause the bash itself is much more relevant than the short time not so strong buff. Note, this skill only allows for single bash weaving, so even if the damage is comparable to Power Slam, in reality it's considerably less damage per weaving. And with the third final script, you can set whatever buff you may lack, like Savagery and Prophecy. The ultimate spell wall can save you a lot of times, and sometimes even kill your enemies, reflecting their own overload and bow procs. Pierce Armor, although it's not great, can be a way of applying breach in your enemies, and Shielded Assault can be a decent get close plus stun. Defensive Posture and its morphs are very decent, but I usually lack the bar space to even consider slotting them. Now, when looking to skill lines, it's very important to consider at least 1 or 2 that will help with your sustain. My recommendations are Restoring Light. Great stamina sustain plus healing over time based on max health with Restoring Focus, while also providing your needed major resolve. Strong Cleanse with Extended Ritual, countering dot damage. Passives that will help you heal, Sacred Ground for extra 10% block mitigation, and Light Weaving, allowing free block while doing heavy attack or skill cast every 15 seconds. Dark Magic. Dark Deal is a decent burst heal that doesn't suffer from the issue of scaling with weapon damage, and also massively helps with your stamina sustain, just great overall. Since it has a cast time, it can be interrupted, so use it wisely. When paired with Restoring Light, it will automatically block attacks for free while casting, providing a great synergy between skill lines. Minor Prophecy passive whenever you cast a skill, increasing your crit chance. Reduced cost of skills, and whenever you block, you reduce 18% more the cost of the next skill, making Power Slam almost for free at this point. Animal Companions. Bull Natch is great free sustain plus cleanse every 5 seconds, while providing the important brutality buff. Deep Fissure for major and minor breach with delayed burst, why not? 20% stamina and magical recovery. Wings for major expedition and either minor evasion or berserk. 5% crit damage per skill slotted, great for crit builds. This skill line is just too good, there's nothing else to say about it. The other sustain skill line will be Siphoning, but I don't think it can compete with the previously mentioned ones, cause you will be only benefiting from siphoning attacks, and I don't think that's enough for us to make the best use of it. Now, going to the offensive side of things, every crit damage skill line will be decent for a crit build, like Assassination and Aedric Spear. Aedric Spear has 2 great stun options, with Javelin and Toppling Charge, while Assassination can only help with passives plus Incap. But even your Incap won't do much damage because of your low weapon spell damage, so it will be more about the stun plus bonus damage done. Now, for raw damage skill lines, we have Storm Calling. Passive 5% physical damage that does affect bash damage, up to 10% overall bonus damage with Amplitude passive that will also buff bash, a lot of speed and mobility with Hurricane and either Streak or Ball of Lightning. Hurricane also provides major resolve. Free flat heals with Critical Surge with the Brutality buff. Extra bit of sustain with Capacitator passive. Every bit is valuable. Overall great skill line and one of the best ones to boost bash damage while also providing a bunch of utility. Earthenheart. Strongest stun plus mobilize in the game with Fossilize. Corrosive Armor is the best offensive ultimate in the game for a bash build, while also providing you crazy survivability. Helping Hands passive helps a bit with stamina sustain, and Battle Roar will bump your resources up whenever you ult. It's not a sustain skill line, but it definitely helps with that. Pummeling Goliath is also a worth to mention ultimate from the Bone Tyrant skill line, but since it's the only thing that the skill line does, I find it a bit underwhelming to recommend. The bonus damage it provides to Bash is interesting, and your bashes also become AoE, but the fact that it scales out of your weapon spell damage makes it not specifically good for Bash build, as regular builds will do comparable damage to Bash builds with it. For defensive skill lines, Winter's Embrace is a solid option, and will provide you a burst heal based on your max health, which is something you will want. The skill line also provides block mitigation, extra armor, major maim to melee attackers, a great major resolve source, and a very good situational shield for projectiles. It's a great skill line. And the other option will be Soldier of Apocrypha, with huge armor bonuses, max health scaling heals and shields, a great stun, sustain and mitigation passives, and a cheesy crazy shield ultimate. I'm not personally a fan of it, but it's still a decent option. Don't try to just stack armor with your skill lines to be a crazy tank. Like every other build, you will be giving up a lot of damage by doing so. Bash builds are not necessarily tank builds, they just use tank weapons. The best way to build towards damage will still have the same average armor numbers than every other build. Historically, people did a lot of crazy tanks with Bash builds, but they don't actually hit that hard, and will hardly have enough damage to kill an experienced player. Yes, the damage scales a tiny bit with armor, but it scales much more with crit damage and raw damage skill lines. For my build, I chose the 3 sustain skill lines combined: Restoring Light, Dark Magic, and Animal Companions. With that much sustain, you can abuse a lot of your higher block mitigation and survive very long fights without ever struggling. Animal Companions still boosts your crit damage, and you have a delayed burst, so you still have enough damage to do just fine. This is definitely not the best combination for damage, but it's the option I find the best as a generalist for any PvP scenario. I also tested combinations with Assassination, Storm Calling, and Adric Spear, and while I felt like a real killing machine, experienced players would frequently know how to lower the pace of the fight and out-sustain me, so I definitely recommend prioritizing your sustain and healing first, and complementing with damage after. Now moving to sets, we must first talk about Deadlands Demolisher. If you're building any Bash build, you should be using this as your front bar set, regardless of your choices. This set adds 935 flat damage to Bash, which is more than 20% of your Bash damage, and it's much more than any other set can do. And it also has the proc for an extra AoE bash every 2 seconds. I don't like too much the lines of this set, but the 5-piece effect is a no-brainer. So after you have your Deadlands on your front bar, you must choose your second set, and since you have high block mitigation on your offensive bar, you can have the luxury of going for another offensive set for more damage. Best options would be Shattered Fate. This is the highest 5-piece penetration set in the game, and you don't have much else to find pen for your build, so this is a solid choice. If you're playing with Corrosive, you might consider something else. Essence Thief. The 10% bonus damage effect is great because it affects your Bash, while also providing that very much needed sustain for Bash builds. The only issue is that again you will only have stamina and weapon spell damage lines, so you will be lacking crit and pen with this plus Deadlands. But this set can be in your back bar, which helps a lot fitting it. Order's Wrath. Probably the best choice for crit damage builds. Since you have to use it on your body, it will also help healing in your back bar, which is great. Twice-Fanged Serpent. Another penetration set with a little more value to it with extra crit and weapon spell damage. Almost the same pen as Shattered, but you have to build stacks. Veiled Heritance. Commonly paired with Deadlands in the past, it provides more bash damage and a good amount of armor. It's not as strong nowadays considering you can get more damage with crit damage, and I would also prefer pen over the bash damage of this set at this point, but it helps stacking armor, so the tank bashers always loved it. If you want to build more defensive options, there's not much to talk. Do your Rallying Cry in the back bar, or you can body Pariah or Trial by Fire, whatever you prefer honestly. For monster sets, since most of them will rely on weapon spell damage to be great, we're a little more limited here. Either Roxa for sustain or Bloodspawn for extra resistance, ultimate and a bit of stamina sustain. For Mythics, if you consider to build more crit damage, which honestly you should if you want to maximize your damage, then go Monomyth. Nothing will compare to it, so you don't need to even think about it. If you don't have it, any utility one will be okay. Wild Hunt for movement speed, Bloodlord's Embrace is great for max sustain on bash builds, Malakath if you go 100% on crit also works decent. Mora's Whisper is okay if you want to go crit but you don't have Monomyth. Just don't use Gaze of Sisyphus. This was historically used quite often on bash builds, I used it in the past, but you will just die if you use it now. With all that crit damage and burst meta, giving up on block is the same of giving up on your only chance to survive. Unless you're shield stacking or doing something crazy different. But anyway, I also know some people who enjoy like Marking Ring of Majesty, Death Dealer's Fat, but since they add almost zero damage to us, they are not great options. And I hate those RNG mythic stuff, so I'm not recommending any. Do whatever you want though. For arena weapons, it's honestly hard to fit. Feels like none of them do great for bash build. Black Rose Prison dual wield could do fine in your back bar, but then you're giving up block mitigation on your back bar, which may be a bad thing for your build in general, so I don't know. I used Maelstrom two-handed in the past when it added flat damage, not percent damage. It was okay, should still be somehow okay, but same issue of not having a tank weapon on your back bar. For races, the options are clear. Redguard is by far the best race for bashing, since it provides a lot of sustain and maximum stamina. The passive Martial Training reduces the cost of weapon abilities by 8%. For those who don't know, bash is also considered a weapon ability, and since our main spammable is also a weapon ability, this passive makes a massive difference and is constantly overlooked. It also reduces the cost of weapon ultimates, which is really good. The offensive option would be Khajiit for the crit damage in case you're building towards it. There's not much to say about other races, so pick whatever you want or whatever you have available. For champion points, try to balance it with your build. Master at Arms and Deadly Aim are great for damage, Exploiter if you have something for off balance, Fighting Finesse is great for crit builds, just don't run any weapon damage CP. Sustain and mitigation ones will also be great, like Sustained by Suffering and Pain's Refuge. Cleansing Revival is high priority in case you don't have any cleanse in your build. Resilience is great if you have no impenetrable traits, or Rallying Cry in your build as well. Ironclad will also save you from a lot of one-shots, so it's worth slotting. And please remember, Bashing Brutality CP, the passive one on the red skill line. For Mundus Stones, pick whatever you're missing. I like Thief because I'm usually low on crit since Deadlands has no crit lines, but for example, if you're running Order's Wrath as your second set, pick Penetration with the Lover Mundus. If you're running Shattered Fate as a second set, pick the crit one, the Thief. Also consider running more Divine Straight on your armor to enhance the effect of your Mundus. You can work around having less impenetrable traits by properly blocking stuff. For stats, just do whatever you need to have more than 30k health, ideally closer to 35k health. You may block a lot, but you still get stunned and combo a lot in this meta, so you need to have enough health to not be one shot. The rest goes into stamina. That's pretty much it for bash build. If you came this far in the video, I can only thank you for watching. If you're considering setting up your bash build, be patient. Practice as much as you can the double bash weaving. It will be a struggle. It always starts as a struggle. You will feel lost, pressing too many buttons, the rhythm goes away, but eventually you get used to it. And that's when it really shines. When you don't have to think about it anymore and it's just pure muscle memory, then you're good to go. Took me long to be a great basher, and if you find it overcomplicated, it's alright. Go slowly. Do single bash weavings, improve bit by bit, and you will get there. No matter how much theory crafting you do, if you don't get good at the mechanical part of it, the build will never work properly. I hope you could learn something new with this video, and if you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe so I can make new stuff for the channel. I'm also streaming, by the way, so stay tuned for that. You can support me on my Ko-Fi, link in the description down below. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, and thank you for spending your time with me. Until the next one.